and welcome to another episode of Momentum Life Choices. Today we're talking to Marcus Barros, who is a man of wide experience. He started off in Latin America, where he did a degree in electrical engineering, and then throughout the last couple of decades has moved between Europe and Latin America, where he's worked for NGOs as well as for corporate organizations, the like of ATT. And I believe at one point he was also a professor at a university teaching computer sciences. So today, Marcus Barros is here to talk a little bit and to share something of his work on the use of mental models. So Marcus, welcome. I hope I got all of that information correct.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. So, Marcus, what exactly are mental models, and why should anybody be interested in it?
Yeah, well, mental models are the patterns that we have stored in our memories, and our brain uses these patterns to understand the world, to make decisions. And we already use mental models. The problem is that most of the models that we use today, they were not chosen by us. They were just acquired by experience. We learned them by experience. And so they are not all the best. They are not always the best that we could use to, for example, solve a business problem. Right. So the idea behind having or adopting new mental models is to have a different tools a set of different tools, right, to solve problems than the one that I already have. That's the idea behind.
So you mean I could actually, or I or we are already using tools, but we don't even know you're using tools because
that's right.
Because we all as humans pattern. We look for patterns, we look for meanings, etc.
Exactly.
And so what you've done, you're saying, is looked at a collection of models and then try and organize it in some sort of more systematic, useful way.
That's right. So you can be intentional about how you will reason or what kind of a framework you use to solve a problem or to understand something.
Okay. And how many of these mental models are there? Have you discovered?
Well, I read a lot about the subject, and there are literally hundreds of non-mental models. If you search, if you Google the subject, you'll find lots and lots. Some are very well known, like Inversion or first principles, and some are there not really very well explored. But the fact is, you can create a mental model and it can become one mental model that you use for that specific kind of problem. So the number is actually, there is no limit for the number of mental models we can have. Okay. And we actually use thousands upon thousands of different models right now. We are talking here, just our conversation, we are, without knowing, we are using mental models already, because that's how our minds work. So our mind only works through patterns. Our brains are pattern matching machine. Patterns matching machines. Always looking for patterns.
Okay, yours might be a good pattern looking for machine, but mine's awful. So just come back a minute and let's just, for example, explain inversion to us. So I have no idea what inversion is. Now, is that some climate change kind of thing, or is it what exactly is inversion in that sense?
Yeah, inversion was invented by a mathematician, and Gustav, forgot his surname now, but he used to say, always invert, invert, invert. You have a problem, you cannot find a solution. Invert the problem. You have a question, you cannot answer. Invert the question. Invert the problem, invert the question. And it makes it usually easier to sort it out. For example, I have groups of people that I mentor.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them are business people. So when I began to gather with these people, like groups of 10, 12 people, I began to ask them, so what is your plan, or what is your idea of your ideal life? Or what do you want to do with your life? And they were kind of not sure how to answer it. So I used the mental model, start with the end in mind. So I told them, look, there's no reason or no way you can plan your life if you don't want, or if you don't know exactly how you want it to be in the end. So let's apply the mental model. Start with the end in mind. Let's suppose that you are old, you are in your last days, and a couple of children come to you and ask, so tell me please about your life. What have you achieved? What are you leaving as a legacy? What you conquered and why you did it, and so on. So suppose that these children are asking you these questions. So what would be your answer? And for my amazement, they were kind of not sure what to say, and they never stopped to think about their lives and what kind of legacy they want to leave. They were just thinking about, I have to be successful, I have to build a business, and so on. But so in the end of the day, why all of this? So when I noticed, sorry.
All of that, I guess, is a bit vague. These kind of,
exactly.
I want to be successful, etc. So you're trying to make it a little more concrete.
Yeah, and so I thought, how can I help them to think better about this? So I inverted the question.
Mm-hmm.
I applied the mental model inversion. I asked them, so tell me what you don't want to happen in your life.
Right.
When it comes to the end, what's the story you don't want to have lived? And then they said, oh, that's easy. I don't want to die in a bad hospital. In a hospital bed. I don't want to die depending on my children to survive. I don't want to be eternally poor. I don't want this and this. So they had a whole list ready in their minds, just because I inverted the question. I said, okay, fine. So if you don't want it, let's now invert it again. So what can we do? What can you do so it doesn't happen in your life? And now we can start building talking about the future you want to build. Okay. So this is a simple example of how a mental model, very simple mental model like inversion, can help us solve a problem or answer a question.
So I guess in that way, by saying what you don't want to happen and then flipping it, so you flipped it twice. You flipped it onto a negative because you can't find the positive, and then you flip it back again looking for the positive, which I guess helps you with some clarity as to, so maybe I do want to end up my life living on the top of a skyscraper, if that's what you want, or something along those lines. So it's, I guess, so that's a really clear example of what a mental model looks like.
Yeah, someone who is very keen on these mental models or inversion is Charlie Munger. Charlie Munger is Warren Buffett's partner.
Yes.
The two mega investors there in America. And Charlie Munger says it's much easier to avoid stupidity than to be a success. So if you want to be successful, invert this question. So instead of asking, how can I be successful? If you start asking, how I can make less stupid decisions, you are probably much better off. Jeff Bezos as well from Amazon.
Yes.
He says, people keep asking me about what the market will be like in the future and or what's going to change in the market. I don't care about it. He inverts the question. Instead of asking what's going to change, he asks what's not going to change. So in our case, he says about his company, we know that people will never want their goods to be more expensive. They will never want their goods to arrive later in their houses. They always will want variety of choices. So we don't bother about what will change. We bother about what will not change, and we build our business understanding what's not going to change. So again, this is inversion being applied here, the same mental model.
And I guess that in some ways is like you could you say, well, this is what is not going to change, or this is what I don't want to change, or the customer doesn't want this to change, so I will then build my strategy to keep that dynamic going.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. That's the idea.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. So perhaps we can drill down a little bit now on, so what are the sort of dynamics that we're looking at when you think about mental models?
Well, because we already use mental models, I thought, well, let's try to find a structure, a framework that will help me to remember my mental models and apply these mental models. So I create a little structure, very simple, using 3 P's. The first P is problem. So what's the problem I'm trying to solve? By problem, it can be, for example, a decision to be made, something I want to understand, or a problem I want to solve. But I represent by the P of problem. And then, or you can use purpose as well. What's the purpose of this mental model? The second P is principle. So I ask the question, what's the principle that I can use to solve this problem? So a principle is anything that is true and applicable, always applicable to solve that kind of problem. And so I choose a principle.
Okay, so is that a problem I get? I think, yeah, my problem is I can't find a parking space for my car, for example, or I can't remember where I've left my glasses.
Yeah.
Or I always have problems forgetting where I put my watch now, or where's my keys. So I guess that we can define a problem fairly easily.
Yeah, but well, okay, let's start from this example. So you can't find, you are always looking for your glasses, for example, your keys.
Yeah.
And you can't find them. So that's the P for problem.
Yeah.
Okay, then we ask ourselves the question, what kind of principle I can use here to solve this problem? And then I can remember, for example, that our brains usually memorize what we pay attention to, or what we connect to a place in our memory. So that's what I do, the principle that I use. So if I have, for example, I come home and I leave the keys somewhere that's not the usual place where I leave my keys.
Yeah.
So I make a mental note of that thing. I say to myself, I am leaving the keys here on the sofa and not there where I usually leave. So by making this mental note, the chances of remembering it increase a lot.
Right.
So again, I'm applying a principle to a problem to solve it. Yeah, and we have the third P for possible questions. So it's helpful very often to have a question or some questions to connect the principle to the problem, so the principle can solve the problem.
Okay. Can you just expand on that one a little bit more, with an example?
Okay. So in this case of the mental note is very easy. I can ask myself, what's the mental note I want to have here? So I will remember where I left my keys.
Right.
So then I create a mental note. Another possible question, what can I use from the environment? Because our memories are directly connected to our environment. Our brains were developed to connect us to the environment. So when I connect the environment to something I want to remember, the chances of remembering that thing increase a lot. There is even a method called the Loki method. It's a Roman method to remember things. So you memorize things by going to a place, or in your imagination, you go to a place that you know very well.
Yeah.
And for example, you have a list of a shopping list. So you start imagining every item of that shopping list being placed on this room that you know very well, or this house that you know very well.
Yeah.
So it's a very useful kind of method. And
okay.
Again, it's a model.
So in that respect, it's let's if we can stick with the keys as the problem. I can't remember where my keys is. And then you say, okay, well, in that case, Johnson, what you need to do is apply the principle of having a note to attach to it.
Yeah, a mental note, yeah.
And then you say to yourself, what possible questions can I ask about the principle?
Yeah.
And exactly. So one of the things you're saying is perhaps to use hooks. I think that's what I'm getting, that you use some kind of hook in your environment to help you figure out where you've left the keys, or something like, or who tells me to leave my keys there, or where do I never leave my keys? Is that the sort of questions the process you'd go through?
Well, if you want to apply the Loki principle, or the principle of the location, right, or the place where you are, you can ask, for example, the following question: how can I exaggerate something from the environment here related to my keys, so I will remember it easily? Why is it? Because our memories, they when we imagine something and we exaggerate or make it funny, absurd, our memories usually store that information easily. So, for example, if I'm going to leave my keys on the sofa, and I want to remember it, I can quickly imagine, ask the question. So how can I make it absurd? So I can, for example, imagine the sofa opening a big mouth and swallowing my keys just for 1 second, and that's it. So when you think, where are my keys? Immediately you remember your sofa swallowing it. So it's funny, but that's how our memories work. I learned it when I was a teenager, reading a book about memory. And there are many good books now about this kind of tricks. But that's how you can connect your keys to the place where you live.
You know, that's so funny, because my keys usually end up under the cushion in the sofa, because as I lean back, they fall out of my pockets. So it's not like, most of the times I don't even put my keys down anywhere. I know where they should be. They should be in my pocket. But so I guess I can imagine that makes me kind of think, oh yes, so I'm actually sleeping on an elephant or a big snake or something, and it's swallowing my keys. I guess that's the application of the question to the principle.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's always helpful to ask yourself this question: what question I should ask in this situation? To ask good questions is the first step towards having good answers. So questions are very important, and questions make our minds think as well. I love it. It's one of the mental models that I use a lot to solve complex problems is the intentional pause. What is it? Well, you know already what it is. You are trying to solve a problem. You are working hard with that, and you don't find an answer. The best thing to do is to, after you are exhausted trying to work on that, you leave it there and go to do something that doesn't require reasoning. Have a shower, go for a walk, and go to tidy up your room or whatever. And very often that happens to me and to lots of people, I'm sure with you as well. You are doing something completely different, and suddenly something clicks, and an answer, a solution, a way out is downloaded into your brain. Well, actually, your brain was working in the background with that, and suddenly you have the solution now. So when you ask a good question and you don't have the answer, your brain will carry on working on that question, even when you are not perceiving or not reasoning about that.
Yeah.
The inner parts of your brain, the unconscious system of your brain, in the language of Daniel Kahneman, your unconscious will work towards solving that problem. And this is really powerful. And again, this is a mental model.
So
I always
yeah,
ask myself, what's the question to be asked here?
what's the question to? So I get that theoretically. I understand that, but the problem I have, Marcus, is my boss wants the answer right away.
Sorry, your boss?
My boss says, I need this now. I need this today. I need the answer now. I don't want you to go home and think about it. I don't want you to have a shower. I don't want you to go to the gym. If you don't do it now, bad things are going to happen to you. So how do you get around that in terms of the pressure of what I'd say real life or office life or corporate life or even home life?
Yeah. Well, one of the most useful mental models I know is called first principles. And that's very helpful for this kind of situation that you're mentioning. You have a massive problem to solve. You don't have a lot of time. Yep. And first principles helps me very often with this kind of situation. What's first principles? It should go deep into the roots of something. Really, really, really deep, up to a point where you cannot go any further. Elon Musk used this mental model when he created SpaceX. So he wanted to build a rocket, and he came to his people there and said, I want to know how much it will cost to build a rocket. And they came to a figure of, I think it was $62 million. And he said, no, that's not possible. That's too expensive. And then he decided to apply the mental model first principles. So he gathered his people and asked them, so tell me, what is a rocket made of? Well, they told him, oh, it's made of carbon fiber, some metal alloys, plus circuits, plus this and that and so on. He said, okay, if we want to build a rocket, how much would all these things cost in the commodities market? And they told him, well, about $2 million. Mm-hmm. He said, that's great. We'll hire people and we'll build our own rocket. They built the rocket for a fraction of the original price. Instead of $62 million, it was something around like $10 million. So that's what made SpaceX viable, financially viable. And all that he did was to go deep to find out what it's made of. In its basic level, it's made of what? Well, fiber, carbon fiber, aluminum, blah, 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 and so on. Okay. And we can apply it to anything in life because usually there is a lot of noise around us. And when we are thinking about a problem, we are surrounded by all these thoughts. But if we stop and ask ourselves, what's the root here? And questioning, up to a point where we come to like the fundamental roots of the problem. We are in a much better position to solve the problem if we get there. It's the method of the 5 whys, the mental model of 5 whys, created by Mr. Toyota from Toyota, the company. Yeah. He would come to a problem in his factory and ask someone there, why is it happening? Yes. So they will explain why. And he said, but why is that? And then, but why? But why? So 5 whys up. So he would come then to the root of the problem. And that is much more effective than just like believing that that's the cause and okay, let's move on, fix it and let's move on.
Yes, yeah. So I guess that for me makes me feel, okay, so we're actually moving somewhere. You get a sense of progress. You don't get brain freeze. You don't get panic because I'm going to get fired because at the end of the day, the boss needs an answer. So by a systematic sort of inquiry, you're getting deeper and deeper into the roots of the problem, like you say, or maybe even like you describe Elon Musk's situation. It's looking at the elements. So we need this, we need that, and the other. And then from what you're saying, for the Musk example, is you open it out as you dig deeper. And then
Exactly.
you solve it by bringing the elements back together in a different configuration.
That's right. It's a kind of a re-engineering, isn't it? You dismantle it and then you build it again.
Yes. Yeah.
Uh,
So that's another mental model that you've just described. So just come back to the idea of there are hundreds of these mental models around. I'm saying, Marcus, I can't even remember where I put my keys. How do you expect me to remember all of this stuff?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. And I use another mental model to solve it.
I thought you'd say.
Of course. Well, I use the mental model with 3 words. I like 3 words because it makes easier for me to remember. But I call it the fallacy of information, or information fallacy. And we believe that we are learning something because we are listening to someone talk about something, or we are watching a video, or we are taking part in a live like this one, or reading a book. And that's just information. It's not really learning. We're just like receiving information. So real learning and real transformation actually happens in 3 steps, I believe. That's my mental model. You start with informing,
Yep.
and then you move to performing, and then you move to transforming. So 3 verbs. So as you are listening to what I'm saying, you are getting information. This information will go away, will disappear from your mind in a few hours. After a couple of hours we were talking here, probably you remember just a few things that we talked, and tomorrow probably nearly nothing.
Did you know my wife? She tells me exactly the same thing, but it takes. She only says 5 minutes. She's not as kind as you. She says in 5 minutes, tell me what I said, and I tell. I do the intentional pause. So yeah.
Or she sends you to the shops, and you come back, and not with what she asked you, and she'll tell you, I asked you to bring one thing and you did not bring it.
I'm saying, no, you asked me for 10 things and I forgot where I put the list. So you're talking about now these 3 things that make up this fallacy of information. Can you just repeat that, please?
Yeah. So you start with information.
Yeah.
But then you have to move. You start with informing. So inform is the first step. And then you have to move to perform, or you have to do something with that information. If you don't do something with that information, it will go away. You will forget it. So you learned something, you heard something, go and act on that immediately. Write it down, build a mind map, think of an experiment where you can make that happen, make use of that. So when you do something with that, for example, you apply a mental model, you invert a question, you start with first principles, you start with the end in mind. So when you use it, you are performing something, and now your brain thinks, wow, that's how it works. And there is different parts of your brain involved there. So new connections are being made. Connections are made in our brain, mostly by moving, by acting, by doing something.
Yes.
And so it's very important that you move from information to action. So inform and then perform. But then, if you want to have real transformation, if you want to really remember where you placed your keys, you have to repeat that action. And as you repeat that action, you have that satisfaction of seeing it work, and that the good feeling about seeing that work, together with the repetition, will create a thinking habit in your brain. So it becomes now something automatic. You don't have to remember that anymore.
Okay.
That's how habits are formed. And so you enter now into the phase of transformation. You are transformed by the repetition associated to a good feeling about that thing. So that's a mental model to help you really remember. For example, I read a book or I don't want to forget these things that I learned here. So inform, perform, transform, or whatever. Yeah,
So does that work in terms of when I was in practice? It used to be see one, do one, teach one. It's the same kind of principle.
Yeah, because when you have to teach something, you have to work, you have to perform with that information. So you receive the information through the books, through whatever, and then you have to transform that thing, that information, into an expression that other people will understand through you. So you are performing something there. And if you teach it not once, but twice, 3 times, the more you teach about something, the more you understand that thing.
The more you learn it yourself.
Exactly. Yeah.
I could get myself in trouble for this sort of true confession, but this is where YouTube came in pretty handy. When I'm learning a new technique, and I have no idea what that technique is, but I'd go on YouTube, and YouTube is brilliant for that. It'll show you anything you want. So it could be even something like, oh, I know what it was. Recently, I laid a new laminate floor, and I spent hours on YouTube looking at, oh, how do you get around the corner? How do you get under the door? And all this sort of stuff. And after several mistakes, and about, they say, oh, you should get 10% more of your material in case you make mistake. Well, I did need more than 10%. But thing is, you finish the floor, and then I show people, and I'm telling my brother-in-law, yeah, this is how you do it, and I have no idea what I'm talking about. Except he thinks I know what I'm talking about. And then I showed this to my son, and he said, wow, you're an expert. I know I'm no expert, but
YouTube is an expert.
I've become an expert by the seeing it, the doing it, and now I'm just bragging about it. But I guess that's the same principle that we're using, is the information. Because I had to, this is the funny thing. When I looked on YouTube, and they tell you need to do this, that, and the other, and I had nowhere in my head to hold that information. I had to actually go in the room and perform the action. And I said, oh yeah, it now makes sense what you're telling me, because it's so abstract. It is, I can see what you're doing, but my hands can't do it. And I guess this is what you're saying.
Exactly. And if you have to lay floors again next week, probably you remember all the steps without having to watch the video again, because you did it, you performed.
Well, you give my memory more credit than I would. But so, are you saying that in terms of the mental models that you've listed and worked with, that it is possible to teach people, a group of people, to actually go through the process for each mental model?
Oh, yes, definitely. I have been doing it for many years now. Right. So the people I help, the business people I help, I usually talk to them about mental models. When they say that they're struggling with something, I usually say, well, let's apply a different kind of mental model here. For example, one that I use a lot is called grow. You have a situation that you want to change, so you use the GROW letters. It's a mental model, easy to remember as well. G for goal. What's your goal here? What do you want to achieve? And then R, second letter, reality. What's your reality? Where you are regarding this problem here? What are the skills that you need? Do you have these skills? What you want to acquire to be able to sort it or to achieve this goal? So you have a goal, reality, and then you have O for options. Mm-hmm. So what are your options, though, if you want to achieve it? And you have this reality around you, what are your options? Are you going to hire someone? Are you going to bring a partnership to help to solve this problem? Are you going to bring a consultant? What are you going to do? What are your options? So you list your options. And then W is for what or will. What will you do? Or what of these options that you have you will use in order to solve the problem or to reach your objective? So it's a very simple mental model, and if you remember the four letters there, you have a pattern, you have a framework to solve a problem or to reach something.
And I think that again, come back to, for me, it's so important when there are times when it's like something triggers, like a crisis happens, and all of a sudden your brain just goes, I don't know why it goes, but it disappears. At least my brain disappears because I'm in panic mode. And without some kind of framework to get you out of the panic mode, you can remain in panic mode for ages.
Yes, and panic mode steals from you, robs you from your thinking, your proper thinking. You don't think when you're in a panic mode. You are just reacting biologically to something.
And my own personal true confessions, again, it makes you tired.
It does, yeah.
At the end of the day, you spend half of the day in panic mode, thinking all this sort of fears come up of what if and all this sort of stuff that just goes wrong in circles in your head.
It does, yeah.
So I like the idea of saying, well, yes, you can use frameworks like the Grow or Inversion or other things that we've talked about, and it can help you move forward and get out of the panic mode.
Exactly. One very helpful way to get out of panic mode is to understand the role of meaning in our emotions. Because, again, this is another mental model that I wrote in my book. I wrote a book about mental models, and I included this mental model. It's a long one. It's not a very short one. But usually, when we want to change something, we ask ourselves, what is the action that I have to change? But to change the actions is not very easy, because actions are usually produced by emotions, by feelings. That's how human behavior works. You feel something and then you act towards that. Much more than our thinking. It's our emotions that lead our actions. And emotions cannot be controlled. I cannot tell you, Johnson, I will tell you something, but don't be angry. Well, you will be angry. Or
too late, it's worked.
Too late, yes. Yeah. Or don't be upset. No, you will be upset. It's the same of saying to someone who is hungry, no, don't feel hunger. Well, there's no point. We don't control emotions. Now, but emotions are mostly produced by meaning. So you feel angry. You are angry with me because of the meaning that you gave to something that I said. So the best way to manipulate our feelings is by manipulating our meanings. For example, why do we panic about something? Because consciously or unconsciously, we're given to that situation or to the possibilities ahead of us a specific meaning. And that meaning creates the feeling. And the feeling, as you perceive that feeling is growing in you, you start being stressed about the stress rising, the stress level rising. And that disturbs the hormonal distribution in your blood. So lots of hormones will be poured out on your blood. And then you get really, really stressed. And you get into panic mode. Cortisol, adrenaline, and everything being pumped into your blood. And then your mind doesn't work anymore. Your prefrontal cortex here, that's the reasoning part of your brain. It shuts down to protect you.
Obviously, you know my brain very well.
My brain as well. So It's not safe for you to think when you are in panic. You are running from the tiger. So
Yes.
you don't want to be pondering A or B. You have to run. You have to have this biological mechanism of making you run. So panic mode is actually a defense mechanism that we have. The problem is, in the life that we live now, we are very safe. We don't have the tiger running after us anymore. We don't
Yes.
have the dangers of the jungle. But we are still panicking, believing that, for example, social rejection will kill us. It won't, but we behave or we feel as if it was, if it is going to. And that's the reason why we panic. So the best way to deal with panic that I know is to breathe and change the meaning of that you are giving to that situation.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So
So
that
that
was a very long answer to your question, but
no, it's a very good answer as well. So as we're talking about the application of mental models, does that mean that if you're talking to a group of people, let's say you're in a corporate management strategy group, does that mean that one person has to hold a mental model, or do all in the group has to be able to apply these things? Because that I can get this, I could do it or you can do it. So what happens in that group situation?
yeah. Well, in group situations, usually the big problem that we have is human behavior.
Right.
It's
Yes, you and I have been in the same place.
nearly every problem we face is somehow related to my behavior or someone else's behavior.
Yes.
Even like business problems, they are related to your customer behavior, your supplier behavior, your team's behavior. It's always about human behavior. So it's very helpful to use the right mental models to understand human behavior.
Okay.
For example, this sequence that I was giving you of events produce meanings in our minds,
Yeah.
meanings produce emotions, emotions create actions, actions create results. So this sequence is a key to understand why people do what they do. I have other mental models as well. I create a simplification of Maslow's hierarchy of human needs.
Yes.
My hierarchy has only 3 levels, so I apply it constantly to try to understand why people are doing what they are doing. And when we understand why we are doing what we are doing, we are better resourced to deal with the situation. For
So
example, yeah, go ahead.
so I guess that works better with teams of people who are used to working together using the framework. So again, this comes back, I think, to what you're saying before. On the first level, it's pure information. So
Mhm.
you give me your book, and I say, oh yeah, Marcus's brilliant book on mental models, and I think, oh that's not, oh that's good, oh that's good. But actually, I don't actually perform any of it. So none of it goes any deeper than right. Oh, is it time to go to the pub now? Ah, great, fantastic mental models. And so where I guess you're saying is that when the team that actually starts to perform certain things can understand these things better because you've sort of got it deeper into the whole team.
Yeah, well, the best way to help the team to use these things is to model it to them,
Right.
like Elon Musk did with his team, or perhaps you are in a situation where you have a problem there. You can tell everyone, look, there is a way to deal with that by inverting the problem, or let's try to apply first principles to understand the roots of why this is happening.
Mm-hmm.
So if you start using it, people start getting how it works, and you can like suddenly or subtly you can educate your people towards
Yes.
choosing better models of thinking and making better decisions as well.
So you're saying to me it's better to model it than to put it up on a flip chart on the wall and leave it there until everybody gets it?
Well, no.
because I guess some organizations would do that. They'd say, right, you guys need to get this. I'm going to send it to you by email every week until I see you get it, and you need to be able to recite it back to me.
Yeah, that's
that doesn't work.
Unfortunately, that's very common, and that is not really effective, is it?
No, and I guess that's why you need, I suppose, somebody to champion or somebody to own it, and then to practice it and to show it that we can then say, oh yes, that did work.
Mm-hmm.
So you're learning from the experience of it.
Exactly.
So no, Marcus, it's been fascinating talking to you about these mental models that you use, and just so that we could where can we learn more? How could we access the material that we've been talking about?
Well, I wrote a short book about it,
right.
And I will send you the link to the book. So if you want to publish it there, post it there.
Excellent.
That's how you can get access. Or you can, if you search the internet as well, you'll find lots and lots of articles about mental models and other books as well. But if you want to know a bit more about these mental models, I mentioned some of the mental models I mentioned here. They are in the book there with examples and this structure. This is something that is my intellectual property as well. These 3 Ps, the way that I apply mental models, I created it. So you will find it there in my book as well.
Great. And I guess you are available for people to contact you directly. How would you find you?
Yeah, well, my email address is Marcos, Marcos, at marcosbarros.co.uk. Barros is Barros. So that's the way to contact me, or by LinkedIn or social networks. Not hard to find me there.
Okay, Marcus, it's been fabulous talking to you. It's been very informative, and now I have to go away and practice these models using the 2nd P, so that finally I'll be able to integrate all that we've been saying. So
fantastic.
It's been great. Okay.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Take care.